Hello world, and welcome to Learning Java, one byte at a time. This is video 13 in a tutorial series geared at bringing the wonderful wide world of Java to those with little or no programming experience. Over the next two videos, we're going to take a step back so we can take two steps forward and truly gain a fundamental understanding of what it means to construct an object from within its own class using a constructor method. Now, this will lead us to the concept of code encapsulation, which is a way of adding an extra layer of protection by using the private modifier to ensure that the object class is the only one that has access to the attributes and methods, as well as internal methods to set those attributes that are called getters and setters. And finally, by the end of the next video, we'll have a real solid understanding of the difference between a static field and method and an instance field and method. So without further ado, let's jump into our Notepad++ application, and you'll see we have two new files here. We have a car.java file, and we have a buildcar.java file. And so you can probably imagine the car.java will be the object class file in charge of defining all of the attributes and behaviors of our car object, and the buildcar.java will be the class file that calls the constructor method of the car.java in order to construct those car objects for us. So if we start with the car class, we're going to go ahead and make sure that it's included in the same package that we'll call car builder. And we'll define the class under the same name, class car. Now in this class, we are not going to include a main method because none of the code execution is going to be happening within this class. We're only going to define the attributes and behaviors of our car object. And so we'll do it like so. We'll define a couple of string variables that we'll call make, model, and color. And we'll also have a couple of integer variables that we'll call year and mileage, and that should be good enough. We're also going to declare a static integer variable that we're going to call car counter, and you can probably imagine what this is going to do. Next, we're going to define the car constructor method, and the way that defining a constructor method within an object class is done is simply by using the modifier public and by naming it the exact same name as the class. And so we'll call it public car, and we'll go ahead and build the method like so. And in and of itself, this is pretty much the bare minimum to having an object with its own constructor method. Now, it's not very interesting. There's nothing that's going on inside the constructor method. But if we were to call this constructor method of this class from the build car class, it would in fact give us a blank car with these attributes, although there wouldn't be any sort of value attached to any of those. However, we could create a bunch of blank cars as of right now. However, just to make it more interesting, let's go ahead and jump into our buildcar.java. We're going to make sure that we include it in the same package, car builder. We'll go ahead and define the class under the same name, buildcar. And here we will in fact declare the main method, because here is where we need the entry point. And in this main method is where we'll go ahead and make a call to the constructor method of the car class. And so the way that you're going to build objects in Java, and much like a spoken language, a programming language is a lot of going through the motions without necessarily having an intuition, and you sort of practice until one day it sort of just clicks all at once, and it's a very strange feeling. And so this was one of the hardest things that I wrapped my head around as far as Java goes. I felt like I was using this command over and over and over again without really having any sort of intuition behind what was going on. And then one day it just sort of clicked, and I saw how brilliant and elegant the way that this was laid out. I saw how brilliant and elegant that really was. And so the reason that we're going to do this in sort of three parts is so that sort of click happens a lot faster for everyone else. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to construct an object the less good way, and then the better way, and then finally the best way, which would be like the polished, professional, enterprise way. And so let's start by doing it the less good way. And so we'll go ahead and say, I want to have a car object. So we're going to tell Java, I'm going to define an object of type car. And I'm going to name it car1. And I'm going to set the value of that equal to a new car that you're going to know, or you're going to construct using the car constructor method. And so this looks like I'm just writing the word car a bunch of times, but there's really a lot going on here. And so I'm telling Java, define an object of type car. And where I've gotten this type of object is the fact that I've made a class file of that same type of object. I have a car class, and that's where Java's going to find the car object. I have to name it so I know what to call it throughout the rest of this code, so we'll just name it car1. And this name can be anything of your choosing. It just needs to make sense within the context of your code. And then because it doesn't have a value yet, I need to use the assignment operator, the equal sign, to give it a value. And I can't assign it a value because it hasn't been built yet. So that's where we use the new keyword to tell Java, go ahead and make me one right now. And then Java says, okay, that's all good and well, but where do I even go to make this car object? I mean, I know what a car object is because you've listed the attributes and properties in this car class, but I don't know exactly where to even start building this thing. And that's where I say, that's okay. There's a method in the car class. It's the constructor method. Just start there and the rest will be easy. And so we're saying, give me an object of type car that I'm going to call car1, set its value equal to the construction of a new car that you'll do by starting in the constructor method. And that's why it sort of looks a little bit funny. And again, we're going to go ahead and step backwards into the right way to do this, and hopefully that click happens sooner than later, and you'll realize just how absolutely elegant and parsimonious this sort of programming style really is. And so now that we have that, we have access to our car1, and since it's a car object, it has inherited all of the attributes and behaviors of the car class. And so it actually has the make and the model, the color, and we access those attributes using the dot operator, as we saw a couple of videos prior. And so what we can do now is we can go ahead and add values to those attributes that it's inherited. So the car1.make is going to be expecting a string value, so we'll call it Ford, and we'll define the car1.model as being another string that will pass through as Mustang. And the car1.color is also going to be a string variable, and we'll call that black. And we'll also define the year, which is going to be expecting an integer, so I'll pass through 2020. And finally, the mileage, which will pass through as being 10,000 miles. And so now we've constructed our car object that we've called car1, and we've actually assigned it all of the attributes that that car can possibly have. Now, what we were going to do to demonstrate that this is actually working is we're going to display onto the console all of this information to make sure that it actually was created successfully and that it actually does have those values. So let's go ahead and print out. We'll do an empty line, and we'll print out make, and we'll concatenate car1.make. And for brevity, we'll go ahead and copy and paste these. Next, we'll do model with the car1.model. And then color with the car1.color. Next is year. And finally, the mileage. If I can type here, mileage. All right. And then finally, what we're going to do is we'll jump back in here into the car class, and within the constructor method, which is where the entry point for the construction of the car happens, really all that's happening at this point is that upon calling the method, it gives me a blank car with all of these attributes without values, and then I've defined those values by making a call to those attributes using the dot operator. But inside the method, I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add into the car counter static field. So I'm going to do that by doing car counter plus plus. And this is just shorthand for saying car counter equals car counter plus 1. I could have done it the long way, but I'm going to just take a shortcut. So this is how you increment a variable. You can also use the minus minus operator to decrement the variable, but in this case I want to increment it. And now that I'm thinking about it, I need to go ahead and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and assign the value up here. Car counter is going to be equal to 0, and every time the constructor method is called, I'm going to add 1 to the car counter. And so now this is where we're going to get a little bit further into the difference between static and instance. These are the instance variables. They're going to be passed through to every single particular car object made, and they're going to be reset every time. This is a static method or a static field. This is going to be sort of stuck to the car object at large, and it's not necessarily going to be passed through individually to each car object created, but it's going to be stuck to this car class. Now, it's true that every single car object will have access to this, but the value of this is not going to be reset every time. It's going to be retained in the car class. And so every time a car is constructed, I'm going to add 1 to this, and then if I were to try to call this field, then it would return the value from every single car constructed. So jumping back in here, we'll go ahead and do one more system.out.println, and in this one, I'm going to just say total cars, and I'm not going to use the car1 to reference the field. I'm going to use the car object itself, the car class itself, because again, it's static to the class. All right, so if we've done everything here correctly, this should successfully print out the car object to the console that we've created. Let's save both of these files and open up our command prompt. Now don't forget, because this is a package, we need to use the -d and dot operator. Okay, and it looks like the car object compiled correctly. Let's go ahead and compile the car builder. I'm sorry, the build car. And there is an error right here. Cannot find symbol car.car count. Oh, it's because I've called it car counter and not car count. So that is definitely my mistake. Let's resave that. We'll try to compile that one more time. And it compiled successfully. So now, knowing that this is a package, we're going to use the Java command to execute it, but we're going to execute it under the package carbuilder.build car. Perfect, and it printed out perfectly for us. We have the Ford Mustang, color black, it's year 2020, it has 10,000 miles, and our total car count is 1. And so this worked perfectly. But like I said before, this is the less good way to do this. So now let's go ahead and take a step back. And actually, before we do that, just for the sake of demonstration, I want to create a second car. Using the same car type object, we're going to create a car2. We're also going to set it equal to a new car. And we can do this pretty quickly if we just do a copy and paste here. For the car2, we're also going to set its attributes. Let's come up with something different. Let's do a We'll do a Honda Accord. We'll do it white. We'll make this one a 2018, and we'll give this one 50,000 miles. And then we're also going to have to display this. So let's copy and paste the commands that display it to the console. And we'll simply just go through and say that we're going to be displaying out the attributes of car2. This should be pretty clear what we're doing. We're going to leave this one single command to print out the total cars, and what we should expect is that this total cars is going to print out 2 now because we've created 2 cars, if we've done that correctly. We'll go back in here, we'll recompile the build car class. Everything looks good, and so let's go ahead and execute this one more time. All right, and just as we expected, we have the Ford Mustang Black 2020 10,000 miles, and we have the Honda Accord White 2018 with 50,000 miles, and our car class car counter has incremented twice, so now we have a total of 2 cars. Alright, so this is about enough content for one video. I don't want it to run too long, but we are going to come right back with the very next video to sort of close up. We're going to back up one step, and we're going to do this the better way, and then finally we're going to end the video with doing it the best way. Hopefully everything in here was informative and entertaining. Again, the message area down below is a great place to have any questions or comments, and I look forward to seeing everyone back again in the next video. Thank you so much and have a beautiful night.